The neon sign outside, Route 17 diner flickered in the early morning haze. Inside, the clinking of silverware and the hum of soft jazz promised a quiet, ordinary day. At the far corner booth sat a girl with tired but determined eyes. Her name was Emily. The braces on her legs made every movement slow, but her spirit carried a dignity the world often failed to notice. Then the door swung open. A group of teenagers stormed in, their laughter sharp, their footsteps heavy. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Customers lowered their heads, pretending not to notice. But Emily noticed because their eyes locked on her. "What's wrong, 10 legs?" One sneered, snatching the straw from her milkshake. Another leaned close, mocking the way she tried to lift her fork. The diner's cheerful background faded as their cruelty grew louder. And then it happened. A sudden shove knocked her crutch to the floor. One of the boys slapped her fries across the table, the greasy pieces scattering like shattered dignity. A hush fell over the room. Emily's face flushed, her lips trembling as she tried not to cry. People watched, but no one moved, not even the waitress clutching her order pad. And just when the silence felt unbearable, the narrator's voice breaks in. If you think the story ends here, if you believe cruelty wins when good people stay silent, wait. Because what happened an hour later inside this very diner will leave you breathless. Emily was only 19, yet her life had already been a battlefield. Born with a condition that weakened her legs, she had grown up surrounded by doubt. Teachers whispered that she would never keep up, neighbors pitted her, and even strangers offered unwanted sympathy. But Emily rejected the label of helpless. With steel braces on her legs and sheer determination in her heart, she learned to move through the world on her own terms. Every step was slow, every journey required effort, but she carried herself with quiet pride. That morning, the diner had been her sanctuary, a place of routine comfort, pancakes that tasted the same every Tuesday, coffee refilled without asking, and familiar faces she passed on her way to college classes. She thought she was safe here, but safety can shatter quickly. The boys who barged in were not strangers to this town. They were notorious troublemakers, loud in the streets, reckless in the mall, and feared by kids their own age. Teachers avoided confrontation, shopkeepers turned their heads, and parents prayed their own children would not cross paths with them. In that diner, their reputation arrived before their footsteps did. As the laughter turned cruel, the staff froze. The waitress who once joked with Emily now hid behind her notepad. The cook peeked from the kitchen door, but did not step out. Customers shifted uncomfortably in their booths, their silence heavier than any words. Emily felt the weight of all those eyes, not one brave enough to intervene. Inside, she tried to steady herself. Stay calm. Do not cry. Do not give them what they want. But deep down, a single thought burned in her chest. Why does the world always go quiet when cruelty gets loud? The laughter at the Bullies booth grew sharper, like knives being sharpened on steel. One of them, a lanky boy with a baseball cap twisted backward, leaned over and flicked a piece of hash brown straight at Emily's plate. Another followed, tossing a crumpled napkin soaked in ketchup, the red stain splattering across her white blouse. The diner gasped, but nobody moved. The boys erupted in cruel laughter, their voices rising above the jukebox humming in the corner. "Look at her," one sneered loudly, making sure every customer heard. "She can't even protect her own food." Emily's hands trembled on her lap. Her throat tightened, but she forced herself not to cry. Not here, not in front of them. Stay calm, she told herself. If I break down, they win. But inside, every word they spat felt like a stone hurled at her chest. The waitress took a nervous step forward, coffee pot still in hand, but froze under the glare of the ringleader. The cook peered out from the kitchen window, then quickly pulled the blind down. Around the diner, customers lowered their eyes to their plates, ashamed but unwilling to interfere. The silence of bystanders cut deeper than the bully's words. Emily closed her eyes for a brief moment, praying for strength, praying that someone, anyone, would stand up for her. She could feel her dignity slipping away, replaced by helplessness she despised. Then, just as another cruel laugh echoed through the diner, the sound changed. A low rumble began to build outside, faint at first, then louder, heavier, until the glass windows themselves trembled. Forks stopped midair. Conversations froze. Every head turned toward the wide diner windows. The growl of engines filled the air like an approaching storm. One motorcycle, then 3, then a dozen. Chrome gleamed under the afternoon sun as the machines rolled into the parking lot in a perfect line. Black leather jackets caught the light, each one emblazoned with patches that spoke of loyalty and fearlessness. The bullies' laughter faltered. Their smirks shrank into uneasy grimaces. Customers straightened in their seats, sensing a shift in the air. And then the door opened. The bell above it jingled lightly. But the silence that followed was thunderous. Boots hit the tiled floor, heavy, deliberate. A towering biker stepped inside, his shadow stretching long across the diner. Behind him, more figures followed, the air thick with their presence. The room had changed. Emily lifted her eyes, and for the first time that morning, hope flickered. The diner had never felt this heavy, this charged with unspoken energy. The bikers didn't speak at first. They stood like statues, scanning the scene in silence. Leather jackets creaked as they shifted, boots pressing firmly against the tiled floor. The leader, a towering man with a gray-streaked beard and eyes as sharp as glass, let his gaze travel slowly across the room before it stopped on the group of bullies. Emily held her breath. For a moment, no one moved. The boys squirmed in their booth, their false confidence still clinging to them like a cheap disguise. One of them forced a laugh. "What, you think you scare us? This is none of your business." The leader finally spoke, his voice low and calm, yet firm enough to cut through every corner of the diner. "It became our business the second you laid a hand on her." The words dropped like stones. The laughter died instantly. The bullies shifted nervously, but one leaned forward, pretending bravado. "We were just joking. She can handle it." The leader's eyes narrowed, his calmness more terrifying than anger. He took a step closer. "That wasn't a joke. That was cruelty. And cruelty doesn't fly here." As if on cue, the other bikers moved. They spread out across the diner, each one taking slow, deliberate steps, their presence closing in around the booth like a tightening noose. Customers leaned forward in their seats, silent, hearts pounding. Even the waitress gripped her tray with white knuckles, unable to look away. One bully shoved his chair back, standing abruptly to mask his fear. He puffed his chest, muttering, "We don't take orders from old men." His hand shot forward, shoving against the biker leader's vest. But the push didn't move him an inch. The biker's hand shot up faster than anyone could see, gripping the boy's wrist firmly. Not crushing, not brutal, just unshakable. The boy's bravado crumbled as his knees wobbled. The leader leaned in just close enough for the boy to feel his breath. "Strength isn't measured by who you hurt. It's measured by who you protect." His words were quiet, but they struck harder than any shout. The diner was frozen, every eye locked on the unfolding scene. The bullies glanced around, realizing they weren't just facing one man, but an entire wall of leather and steel surrounding them. The atmosphere crackled, electric, suffocating. Finally, one bully whispered, "Let's get out of here." The others nodded quickly, their tough facade shattered. They slid out of the booth, shoulders hunched, eyes avoiding Emily's. The leader released the boy's wrist, and without another word, the gang of teenagers stumbled toward the door, swallowed by the stares of everyone inside. The turning point had arrived. Arrogance had collapsed into fear, and cruelty had finally met its match. The door of the diner swung open as the bikers guided the bullies outside, their boots echoing like drums of justice. Engines still idled in the parking lot, growling like watchful beasts. The teenagers stood in a shaky line, their earlier arrogance long gone. The leader stepped forward, his shadow stretching across the asphalt. His voice was steady, calm, but sharper than steel. "If you ever touch her again, or anyone like her, you'll regret it. Do you understand?" The boys nodded quickly, their faces pale, sweat shining on their brows. The weight of humiliation pressed heavy on their shoulders. Without another word, they scattered, running toward the edge of the lot, desperate to escape the wall of motorcycles that boxed them in. Inside, the tension finally cracked. Applause rippled through the diner, soft at first, then louder, until nearly every customer joined in. Relief swept over the room like fresh air after a storm. People smiled at one another, shaking their heads in disbelief at what they had just witnessed. The leader returned quietly, no boast in his step, only purpose. He spotted Emily's small handbag lying on the floor near a chair. With surprising gentleness, he picked it up and set it back on her table. Then he leaned down and said, "You're stronger than they'll ever be. Don't forget that." For the first time that morning, Emily's lips curved into a smile. Her voice was soft but steady as she whispered, "Thank you for everything." The bikers didn't leave right away. Instead, they slid into a few empty booths, ordering coffee and pie, chatting with the waitress, who was still wiping her eyes. Emily felt the warmth spread through her chest. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. She felt safe. That morning inside the diner began with cruelty, but it ended with a lesson no one would ever forget. Emily had walked in feeling invisible, but she left with the strength of an entire family behind her. The biker's presence was a reminder that allies can appear in the most unexpected forms, sometimes wrapped in leather jackets, with engines roaring like thunder, yet carrying hearts capable of immense kindness. The bullies, who believed their laughter gave them power, discovered that cruelty never goes unanswered. Their shameful exit became a warning to anyone who thinks the vulnerable are easy targets. And for the silent bystanders, the message was clear. Courage is not optional, it is necessary. When good people rise, darkness retreats. Emily wheeled out of the diner that day stronger than she had ever felt, while the bikers watched proudly, knowing they had rewritten her story forever. Now I want to ask you something. If you had been in that diner, would you have stayed silent or would you have stood up? Real strength isn't about size or fearlessness. It's about courage mixed with kindness, the power to protect someone when they need it most. This story is more than a moment. It's a reminder that cruelty survives only when good people look away. So share this video, let it travel beyond this screen, and make it a stand against cruelty. Subscribe for more stories that prove humanity still has heroes.